Mic check.
Welcome back to Teepee Chronicles, where we uncover the interrelationship between NYC's vibrant urban culture and the ever-evolving world of multimedia communications. Through storytelling, let's explore how multidisciplinary fields intersect to shape ideas and spark innovations. Today, I am honored to welcome Dr. Denise Sutton, author of Globalizing Ideal Beauty. Sutton's work uncovers the untold story of women copywriters in the 1920s, whose ad campaigns shaped global beauty standards and highlighted the influence of working women in business. With a background in women's studies, communications, and teaching, she brings unique insights into gender, advertising, and culture. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
So I'm Denise Sutton. I'm a faculty member at City Tech in the business department. And I have to say, I never thought I would end up in a business department because my background is in the humanities. So I have a PhD in gender studies. And when I started to do research for my dissertation, I ended up studying a group of women in advertising in the early 1900s. This group of women worked at J. Walter Thompson advertising agency, and that story became my dissertation. And I learned a lot about advertising and marketing. And my first book is Globalizing Ideal Beauty, Women, Advertising, and the Power of Marketing. And that really kind of opened the door for me to work in a business department. And because the City Tech business department has a fashion program, then that made it really kind of a perfect fit for me. And gender studies is interdisciplinary. So, and that's exactly what I wanted in a graduate program. I just didn't want to be stuck in one discipline. And my background is in the humanities. As an undergraduate, I majored in English, and I even did a master's program in 18th century British literature. But every time I wrote a research paper, I was writing it from a gender perspective. And I remember once my advisor as an undergrad, he was a Shakespeare scholar. And one time he said to me, maybe you should explore, something different. And I remember thinking, why would I want to do that? This is my passion. This is what I really want to explore. And so I think because gender studies is so interdisciplinary, it really prepared me for this faculty position in the business department, and especially in the fashion program. It's the business and technology of fashion, so it's not so much about design. And so I was able to create a course at the senior level on beauty culture, commerce, and innovation. So that was fun for me to do, create an interdisciplinary course for students in the program. So, my background really started off in the humanities, but because of the graduate program I chose for my PhD, I was able to explore outside of that discipline. And, I had professors from political science and anthropology and linguistics and history. So that really informed the way that I approach my research and my writing and my teaching today.
I have to say, I'm really honored to finally meet you in person because I took a class with you back in the spring of 2024,
Mm-hmm.
and we never met in person. We had our class via Zoom, and then I really liked your work, and you liked my drive and stuff, and so we followed each other on social media, and we've been like keeping up to date with each other, but we never met in person. So it's finally really good to meet you in person.
So nice to meet you too.
What sparked your interest in fashion?
That really started when I was doing research for my dissertation. So when I started studying this group of women at the J. Walter Thompson advertising agency, I noticed that well, first of all, there was a special department just for these women. It was called the Women's Editorial Department. And all they did was campaigns for household products and beauty products, products for women. And J. Walter Thompson really promoted the women's editorial department to their clients or potential clients as a way to get inside of a woman's head, right? Like, why would a woman buy this moisturizer as opposed to this other moisturizer, right? So the women in the women's editorial department were doing all of these beauty campaigns. And I had the chance to go down to Duke University, where the J. Walter Thompson archives are held in the library. And I just found so much material, so fascinating about how these campaigns were put together and the strategies behind the campaigns. And I realized these women were real innovators in the advertising industry. They were creating strategies that we still see today. And the leader of the women's editorial department, Helen Lansdowne Reeser, she is credited with coming up with a psychological appeal in advertising. And she is credited with creating the first ad campaign that used sex to sell. And if you look at the campaign now, you're like, that's not so sexy. I've seen more than that. But in the 1920s and the 19 teens, it was pretty radical. And so I became so interested in beauty and beauty products through the campaigns that these advertising women were putting together. And that became part of my focus on fashion.
Wow, your background is so fascinating and colorful. So, what do you find most fascinating about the history of fashion and its evolution over time?
Mm. What I think about a lot is the impact of the Industrial Revolution. And when I teach that intro to the fashion industry course that you were in, that's where we start. We start at the Industrial Revolution because the Industrial Revolution gave us the modern fashion industry. It is what we know as the fashion industry today. So that mass production and all of those factories that were developed and all of the other technology and advances in communication and transportation made what we recognize today as the modern fashion industry. And when I think about what fashion was like before the Industrial Revolution, I think about how much work women had to do, how much harder it was to clothe yourself and your family, all of the work, all of the labor, yeah, that went into, putting together a wardrobe. Unless you were wealthy, then you could go to a tailor or a seamstress to have your clothes made. But most people weren't wealthy, and most people still aren't, at that level. So yeah, that's what I think about a lot, and when I think about what we're dealing now with technology, I think back to the Industrial Revolution and how much that changed people's lives. And I think about today in our advances in technology. And I think that when there is a big leap in technology, like the Industrial Revolution, or now I kind of think of it as another technological revolution, there's usually a period of great expansion, but then regulations have to be put into place to kind of control that expansion. And with the Industrial Revolution, a lot of it was about labor and the exploitation of labor. And now, when I'm thinking about AI, I'm like, how are we going to get a hold of this new technology?
Thinking back when I took introduction to fashion industry with you, I remember us discussing how bespoke tailoring was replaced by tailoring machines. Um, and today, a lot of people don't know how to fix their own clothes. Back in the days, they used to be able to do that on their
Mm-hmm.
own. And touching back on this whole discussion on AI, generative AI, and the role it plays on today in the writing process of many students and professionals, What do you think about this?
What I worry about actually is the loss of a creative process with this new technology, because I think there's something to be said for going through a creative process to get to that final project or final product. If you're working on a piece of writing, you have to um, do multiple drafts, right? And actually, for my own writing, that's how I learn what I want to say. I learn what I want to say as I'm going through multiple drafts. And I think that in and of itself is a valuable process. And I really don't want to lose that process. And I don't want my students to lose that process. I want that to remain a valuable part of what we produce as scholars and as artists.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you say that. I'm not saying that AI in general is a horrible thing. There are places like in the medical field and many others where it is doing great things. However, because we don't have a lot on the effects of AI on students who are developing their ability to think critically, um, that transition that goes from I'm thinking critically in an academic way to I'm thinking critically in a professional way.
Mm-hmm.
um, how is that going to look for students later on in the future when they're constantly depending on AI to think critically for them? I was recently introduced by a very good professor in the professional and technical writing program to this book by Neil Postman called Technopoly: The Surrender of Culture and Technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this book so interesting. It talks about how we view technology, especially new technology, we view it and we welcome it into our society without questioning how this can affect our culture, how this can affect our fundamentals, how this can affect the way that we think critically
Yeah.
and our discipline and all that stuff. And I feel like this is what's happening to students. Is there a specific moment or trend in fashion history that you believe has had the most lasting impact on how we view clothing today?
Mm. I often think of the 1920s and the 1960s as two decades when fashion really kind of rebelled, right, against the traditions that came before in terms of silhouette and what people considered appropriate to wear. But I think in the 1960s, we started to see more options for men. And that's especially fascinating to me now because I think we're in a really exciting moment in fashion where men are able to explore their creativity and their feminine side and masculine side and everything in between, more than they ever have in the past. And I see that happening a little bit in the 60s, but for whatever reason, it's really kind of exploding now with men. You see it at like the celebrity level or musicians who are really pushing the boundaries, in terms of um, the way that they're dressing, but also in terms of the way that they wear their hair, and men using color cosmetics. And so we see in the beauty industry companies responding to that and creating lines of color cosmetics and skincare for men. So we see Chanel, like a leader in the beauty industry, creating Boy de Chanel, right? A line for men. And it's not just skincare, but it's also color cosmetics. And um, there are a slew of brands now focusing on men as the consumer. And I think that that's really interesting. And I think it's wonderful for men who are now getting more options, or they're realizing that they have more options to express themselves. And maybe not for my generation so much, but I see it with my students,
Right,
that they want that.
right.
And they want that freedom to explore who they are without those traditional boundaries of, oh, this is masculine and this is what you're expected to look like. And I love that that's happening for men.
Yeah, I love that too. I do see what you're saying. I've seen the combination of skirts with pants, and it goes from it. They do use neutral tones like black, white, nude colors and whatnot, but I do see it, and it clashes so well because it's completely masculine with completely feminine. One of the most feminine things that a woman can wear, one of the most feminine garments are. Um, skirts or dresses. And these two completely polar garments, like pants and skirts, are so
Mhm.
bold and eclectic when combined together. I love it. I think it's beautiful. I think it's so edgy. It's incredible. So, you being a major advocate for sustainability in the fashion industry, can you tell us a little bit about the nonprofit organization Fashion Revolution?
I was actually interviewed for a CUNY TV show called Sustainability Matters. Yeah. I loved it. And there was a representative from Fashion Revolution there. And the amazing thing that they've done is that they've made this a global effort. So Fashion Revolution is in, I don't know how many countries, but I did notice that they just started an office in Austria, in Vienna, Austria. And the work they do is really important because it's not just a group of activists, it's actually people in the industry that are part of the revolution. And that's what we really need, not just people in the industry, not just activists, but people from all sectors coming together. And consumers are a big part of that.
I would like to take a moment to tell my listeners to follow fashionrevolution.org. They have a page for NYC. And, get involved, learn more about how you can make your clothing more sustainable, how you can improve your relationship with your garments. Some things that you can do by visiting the website is follow Fashion Revolution on social media, sign up to their newsletters. Um, Find your country and team, download any of their resources, take action by sending out emails to certain institutions or organizations that are not supporting sustainability and are majorly responsible. Buy their magazines or books that can help you live a more sustainable life when it comes to your clothes. Or download their posters and use them, spread the word. All right, let's end this with a fun question. If you could bring back one historical trend in fashion, what would it be and why?
I think it would be the look of the flapper in the 1920s. Because I was thinking about the same thing. Yeah. I love the flappers, the feathers, yeah, combined with the thin, very breathable clothes. Right. And just the idea of movement, right? Transitioning from like the corset and getting rid of that and the freedom of the silhouette being that rectangular silhouette that isn't like cinched in at the waist, or emphasizing the bust line in some way. And just that whole idea. And I have to say, what was happening politically and culturally at the time, women getting the right to vote. And
Such a statement.
yeah.
Thanks for watching.